Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the pawpaw. Now I'm not talking about the relative of the papaya, which grows in the tropics. I'm talking about a fruit called the pawpaw, which grows in hardiness zones 5 to 8 in the United States. It is a native plant to the United States, and it has been obviously around for a long time here, but we don't pay much attention to it. And I love this fruit. I know I say this about everything I talk about, but this is one of my favorites. Again, and I'll tell you more of the reasons for why it's one of my favorites in a little bit. But first of all, just talking about what it is. It's Amimina triloba. That's a scientific name for it. It is. There's only one other Amimina variety that I know of, and it's like triloba or something, and it grows down in Florida. I don't know if there's any use for that, but Amimina triloba, which triloba means 3 petals. This variety produces a fruit that looks like a mango, but when you cut into it, it's very different from a mango, but it does feel very tropical. And I think one of the reasons we think of it as something that feels very tropical is related to the custard apple, which is a tropical fruit. So all of the relatives of the pawpaw actually do grow in the tropics. This is the one, I guess, species of this same genus that grows, this family. This is the one genus and species of this family that actually grows in cooler to cold climates. So you can grow this in a large part of the United States and in areas where you can't grow other things that feel tropical. So that's kind of what's really interesting about that. And the flavor, which I'll tell you about in a little bit, is also tropical too. It's not at all related to the papaya. And so this is a common misconception. They hear the word pawpaw, they think about papaya, they think this is, they're not even remotely related. In fact, the papaya, or the pawpaw version of the papaya, is more closely related to broccoli than it is to the pawpaw that I'm talking about. So there's really no connection between the two. So like I say, it looks like a mango, but once you cut into it, you start to notice differences. The pawpaw has multiple brown seeds, which are about that big, like the size of a lima bean, and they're dark brown. And obviously the mango, as you probably know, has one large seed in the middle. The pawpaw does have its flavor is a little bit mango-ish. It's kind of like a cross between a mango and a banana and maybe some other tropical fruits thrown in. And different varieties of pawpaws have slightly different flavors. And so you can, when you're ordering a pawpaw tree, you can sometimes find different varieties with different flavors. So it's, I think, partly because it hasn't been cultivated up until fairly recently, there's still a whole lot of variety in what you will find out there. And you can also find it still in the wild, and you can save those seeds. Although your pawpaws that you get from wild pawpaws will probably be a whole lot smaller, more like about that big as opposed to perhaps that big. So there's that trade-off. And you'll find more seeds in the wild variety, or it'll be more closely packed with seeds, whereas the larger varieties, some of them have fewer seeds, more fruit, more bang for your buck, so to speak. The flavor I've talked about, but the texture is what's unique. The texture is not really like a mango. It's more custard-like. I suppose that has to do with it being related to the custard apple. Maybe that's the whole the reason for that, calling it a custard apple and being in the same family. It kind of has a very smooth texture to it. and it's sweet. It's delicious. I really like it. Some people don't tolerate it as well. And so this is where the drawbacks come in. And this is why some people don't want to plant or grow the pawpaw. And that is some people have allergic reactions to it, number one. And that's something, so you want to take it, slowly with this. Like, when you're introducing your kid to peanuts, you don't give them a whole peanut butter and jelly sandwich, give them a little taste. Start like that with the pawpaw and see how you tolerate it. Just like all these other unusual foods that I'm telling you about, always start slowly. Make sure you have a very ripe pawpaw. If it doesn't taste really sweet and if the flesh isn't really soft, it's not ripe. You probably shouldn't eat it. There are toxins in the pawpaw, and I don't know if they're more concentrated in unripe as opposed to ripe pawpaws, but I do know that there are toxins in there. And if you concentrate these toxins, they are not good for brain cells. So there have been situations where people have eaten too much of related fruits and come down with Parkinson's-like disease from it. Now you can eat quite a few pawpaws before you have that problem. It's not something that people are dropping like flies from. And I'll tell you, in Ohio, they have pawpaw festivals, and I've actually looked to see if in Ohio there is increased numbers of Parkinson's cases, and there are not. So while this is something that's been shown in laboratory situations, if you take this concentrated toxin from the pawpaw and apply it to brain cells on rats, it kills the brain cells. This is it's not something that's happening all the time. So you can safely eat it if you're not allergic to it, but don't go overboard, just like so many other things. And if you grow a pawpaw tree, you're not likely to go overboard, honestly. They're only ripe one time per year. You can save them by putting them in the freezer, but they'll only last so long. So just take it easy with them and enjoy them, but don't overdo it. The toxins also, some people have an allergic reaction to the leaves and the bark of the pawpaw tree. So that's just another thing to think about. I've never had any problem with that. I've never had any reaction to it. I've planted them. I've certainly been in very close contact with pawpaw trees, and it's never bothered me. But some people do have this, and this is probably a natural pest resistance that the pawpaw has developed, and probably helps the pawpaw to survive. But your body will have either a way of dealing with it or not. And if your body doesn't have a way of dealing with it, like some people don't deal well with peanuts because of the toxins that are in peanuts, you shouldn't eat them. So fruit ripeness is really important. But you see, this is one of the reasons that the pawpaw has not actually been popularized in grocery stores, and that is that as this fruit ripens, it's really, really easily marred. It gets scratches and bumps and bruises that are very apparent on the skin. The skin gets brown marks, and so by the time the pawpaw is truly ripe, quite often it's going to look like a bruised old banana in terms of coloration and spots and stuff. This isn't something you have to worry about. This is actually a good sign that your pawpaw is ripening. And so you want to pick them a little bit before they are ripe, but just when they're starting to have a little bit of give, and then you ripen them the rest of the way indoors. One of the reasons that you want to do that with a pawpaw is that it will often drop its fruit as soon as they really are ripe. So and especially in like windy situations, I've lost all of my pawpaws because of a windstorm before. They fall off really easily, drop to the ground. Now, I will sometimes pick them up if I catch them in time, but some people don't like doing that. But there's no reason not to, unless it's covered with bugs, or there's something on the soil that you want to protect yourself from. Planting pawpaws and pawpaw growing conditions are one of the reasons that I like to grow these fruit. One of the really special things about the pawpaw is that the tree is shade tolerant. In fact, so much so that if you're starting pawpaws from seeds, you really need to start them in a shady situation. So that's very important. But if you have bought a pawpaw that has been grafted, it's been grafted from a branch that has already experienced lots of sunlight, that is adapted. You don't have to worry so much about making sure you plant it in the shade. And that's a common misconception, is that you have to plant your pawpaw in the shade. It's not true. If it's a grafted pawpaw, you can plant it in the sun. It will do perfectly fine, no problem. If you're growing it from seed, definitely start it with some shade. Quite a bit of shade, in fact. I have, in the past, planted my pawpaw tree on the north side of a fence. And then the tree, as it grows up, it grows toward the light, and eventually when it hits the light, it's ready for it. It's old enough to take full sunlight. And they do just fine in full sunlight. In fact, they'll probably produce more fruit, but they will still produce fruit. At least many plants will still produce fruit in the shade, especially some of the cultivated varieties like the Peterson's varieties and stuff. Those will still generally, and this is broadly speaking, produce fruit even with quite a bit of shade. I don't know about full shade. I'd be a little careful about that. Definitely let it have some sunlight. But you can get away with a whole lot with this tree and make it part of a companion planting group with other shade-tolerant plants. And that's a really neat idea. And I think I'm going to talk about a shady companion planting, perennial guild in a future episode. But this is something you can experiment with the pawpaw tree. And there aren't very many other trees that will produce anything significant in shady situations. So very special for that. In terms of planting, now when you plant from seed, I started these from seed before, and one of the challenges is, first of all, it takes a long time. It doesn't take a long time to germinate. Well, it takes a while to germinate, but once it does, it starts with its root, and the root drives way, 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 way down before you see anything come up from the top. And so you really want to start it I will sometimes start them in yogurt containers, but those aren't even necessarily large enough. You almost need twice that height to properly start and keep your pawpaw until it was a few inches tall. So ideally, you will plant them in situ. You will plant them where you want them, but you don't have to. You can grow them you could grow it in a tube, for instance, if you wanted to indoors. And I've experimented with that too, with like PVC pipe, and that works okay. But getting them out is a little bit of a hassle, and they don't always transplant great. So just FYI. I have been happier with the ones that I've purchased as improved varieties. I haven't been quite as happy with the ones that I've grown from seed. They take a long time, and I haven't had one yet produce for me, and I've been doing this for quite some time. So just to let you know, if you want to start something and you want to get a reliable result, the pawpaw is one thing where you might just want to invest in a cultivated, grafted variety that will produce larger fruit and produce faster. So just, it's fun to experiment. So what I now do, the ones that I'm growing from seed are really intended as cross-pollinators. They're not intended to be main producing plants. The ones that are I'm expecting to get the best results from are the ones that I bought the grafted variety. We'll see. It might be that some of the ones that I planted from seed will eventually turn into really amazing trees, in which case I want to preserve them. But it's hard to tell because they're taking so long. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to mention was it cooking. There seems to be some online. I find a lot of discussion about people, when they cook the pawpaw, it disagrees with them. It doesn't agree with them. But other people say that they have had no problem with this. So I don't know what causes that. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind that, sometimes when it's cooked, it might be less tolerated. I don't know if this is true. It's just what I've been finding when I've looked around about this kind of information, because I like to do a little research before I talk to you about things. But it's just something to bear in mind. But this is a fun plant. If your system tolerates it, it's an amazing thing to have in your yard. You can grow it in mostly shade if you need to. You can grow it with other shady plants. A good option. So, pardon me. So it can kind of extend your growing area in your yard with another fruit tree, which is cool. So please give me a thumbs up. Drop some comments below. What is your experience with pawpaws? Have you tried them? Do you like them? Do you tolerate them? Have you had any allergic responses to the pawpaw? What did you think about the taste? What was your experience with that? Also, check us out at foodforestgardenclub.org. Love to see you there. We're having a great time swapping seeds, swapping stories, getting together every couple of weeks for Zoom chats and stuff. So it's a fun experience, and this is fun talking to you like this. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow.